Hey everybody, this is Andy Curran, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast. Who's Andy Curran, you might ask? Well, I played in Coney Hatch, Leisureworld, Drug Plan, Caramel, Envy of None, the list goes on and on. Stay tuned, you're listening to Nothing Shocking.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Unteed, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Lifeson or any pod catchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. And our guest is
Andy Curran
of Coney Hatch,
yeah.
Legendary Canadian band. He's got a new endeavor on the horizon with Alex Lifeson of Rush. We're kind of unsure when the release date of that album is going to take place.
I don't know the label name, but it's in the UK.
Yes, it is. So we're not quite sure exactly when the release date of that album is going to take place, but we know it's coming soon.
Yeah, and the band's called Envy of None.
Yep. So check it out. Be on the lookout for that album. Check your social media. It should be coming, I'm guessing, in the next, 6 months maybe?
Yeah, look for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're excited.
So before we let you go tonight, we're going to do a little segment of what we've been listening to, because we haven't done it for a few episodes. So, Jeffrey, what have you been listening to? I know something very interesting.
Yeah. So, as we've mentioned several times on this podcast, we've even had a couple of the artists from the band. I'm a fan of White Lion. I'm also a big fan of Mike Tramp.
As am I.
And so I didn't realize that he had so many solo albums and so many different projects after White Lion. So
yes, he did.
I only knew the White Lion stuff. So I've been kind of tracking that stuff down. And I purchased Gathering of Freaks. It's the second album from about 1994 from a band called Freak of Nature.
Yep.
And it's, for fans of White Lion, you're going to like it. It's got the kind of a little bit of a White Lion sound, but it's heavier. It's definitely more rock. More of the heavier songs from White Lion. Take the heaviest songs and
yes,
it's in that direction.
I think it's going to challenge diehard White Lion fans if they have not heard this band, because it's something different than what you're accustomed to from what Mike Tramp is known for, as far as pop songs or popular songs from White Lion.
Yeah.
That's just me, but it's killer stuff, rockin' stuff.
Yeah, it's been in my player all week.
I have mine coming in the mail. It should be here next week. But what I've been listening to is one of my all-time favorite bands, Morcheeba. The album is Chirango, and if you're not familiar with Morcheeba, they are a trip-hop band from the UK with Sky Edwards on vocals and the Godfrey Brothers. So if you're into something a little bit different, a little soulful, a little trippy, and maybe a little bit of R&B sound to it, check Morcheeba out. They have a large number of albums in their catalog. I don't know if you know this or not, Jeff, but when you come over for bonfires, I have it on the MP3
Oh, I know.
player.
I've been checking it out over the years. I have to listen to more.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chirango was released in 2002. And it is a great song. It's a great song. It's a great album with great songs. Can I talk tonight in this intro? But anyway, if you're not familiar with Morcheeba, check them out. It's a great listen. But hey, no more talk of this. Let's get to Andy Curran.
Yeah. Coney Hatch. Let's go.
Coney Hatch. Let's go. Good night. Andy, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Andy, this is going to be fun to talk to you tonight.
Jeff, how are you? And Eric, great to finally connect, buddy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, so excited to do this interview. I think I didn't even sleep a wink last night because you were calling my phone. So we're so excited to have you.
Awesome. And let me tell you guys, I did a little bit of homework. I was like, okay, what's this Nothing Shocking podcast all about? And so I took a peek at some of the former guests that you guys have had on, and I was surprised to see my buddy Amir Dirac on there. I've known Amir since, oh my God, man, going back to when I toured with Judas Priest. I met Amir in San Diego. And then also you guys also did something with Damon Johnson from Brother Kane. Brother Kane are one of my favorite bands, and I've met Damon quite a few times. He's a very good friend of Nick Raskulinich's, who produced the Rush records. So I was like, oh, wow. I mean, that's just two names that popped out, but both those guys are friends of mine. Amir being like one of my oldest friends. I haven't spoken to him in a long time, but what an awesome guy and what a great musician and a great engineer as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing that's awesome about Amir, I mean, so diverse in his music.
Yeah.
You know, the Julian Kay stuff is so not what people, thought. Like, hey, this is the guy from Rough Cut? Are you kidding me? Doing the industrial type stuff, the alternative industrial. So, fantastic musician. We were thrilled to have him on the podcast.
Well, you know what the crazy thing is about Amir and myself, and when I met him in San Diego when Coney Hatch opened up for Judas Priest on the Screaming for Vengeance tour, I got introduced to him through a friend of mine, a girl that I was actually dating at the time who lived in San Diego. And she said, oh, my friend Amir, he's such a great guitar player, and you should check him out. And then many years later, when he actually was in Rough Cut, we did some shows with Rough Cut, and I was like, how the hell does this happen? You meet a guy randomly backstage, and then next thing you know, you're touring with him, and so that tour was Accept, Coney Hatch, and Rough Cut. And Amir and I got to hang out quite a bit. And then many years later, when he joined Orgy, he invited me to a couple shows. And like I said, we kept in touch, and just an awesome guy. And you're right, very versatile. And, he's definitely not a one-trick pony, that boy. He's been involved in a lot of different styles of music, and I got a lot of respect for Amir Dirac.
Oh, absolutely. So, as you can kind of tell, as you go down our list of past episodes, we're kind of a non-genre-based rock podcast, so we don't fit into a niche at all, so I hope you're ready.
I'm actually was very, very pleasantly surprised to see that you guys were like all over the map in a good way. So, no, I'm ready, dudes.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's get this thing started. With COVID-19 halting the music business for the past 18 months, you've been extremely busy during the pandemic. Can you talk more about your time during the lockdown?
Yeah, it's interesting because I mentioned my first band that kind of put me on the map, which was Coney Hatch. We started that band back in '82, and I was working very closely. I still am with a really cool, iconic music venue in Toronto called the Mocambo, and anybody that knows their stuff would recognize the name, the Mocambo. It's kind of like Canada's version of the Cavern Club, or maybe CVGB's, or one of the really great venues in LA, whether it be the Roxy or the Troubadour. But there's so much history dating back to 1948 when that club first opened in Toronto as a Latin salsa bar, but really sort of hit its stride in the late 70s, early 80s. And I can recall, I'm dating myself here, boys, but I would go there. I saw Rory Gallagher play a show there. I saw the Cars, the very first time the Cars came to Toronto. They played that club, and the Rolling Stones did a show there where they were billed as the Cockroaches. They were the opening act for April Wine, and they ended up recording a record there. But there was just like crazy buzz around the fact that the Stones were in town and playing this 400-seat venue. So fast forward to COVID, to answer your questions, the guy that there's a Toronto entrepreneur by the name of Michael Weckerly, and he bought the club and renovated it, and they've got live streaming capabilities in there, and they broadcast at 4K and 192 high-res audio. So he was a big Coney Hatch fan, and he saw us play the El Mocambo 1983, probably the same year that I saw John Bon Jovi play there. When we first signed our deal with Mercury Records. So he, in the middle of COVID, he said, Andy, I want Coney Hatch to come back, and would you guys consider doing a live stream show? So I worked out a deal with them where we agreed to do a live stream with nugs.net, but we also shook hands that we would be able to take that audio afterwards and mix it properly and do our first ever Coney Hatch live release. And we had a lot of people that told us that Coney Hatch was at their best when they were playing live. It was basically two guitars, bass and drums, four on the floor, no, what I like to call no frills cock rock. It's just straight up the middle, right? And so we were excited about doing that, guys, because really that the set that we put together spanned all of our studio records, and we kind of put together a set list like, okay, if this was ever going to be a best of, we're going to represent every single record on this, right? So that was a lot of fun for us, and we did it real DIY. We made the record available at the time of ticket purchase, so if you wanted to bump up your ticket for the live stream, you could opt in to buy a T-shirt and get the vinyl sent to you, and we did it on CD as well, and the vinyl sold out. We sold out really quickly on that, and we hand stamped every version of it, and we signed and autographed it, and it was a labor of love, boys, but we're really proud of how that turned out. And so that was one of many projects that I dug in on over COVID. I mean, there's more that we could talk about. Obviously, the big elephant in the room is the project that I'm working on with Alex Lifeson and Maiah Wynne. But the Coney Hatch thing just kind of got the juices flowing, and I was like, okay, we're kind of in lockdown here. Like everybody else, I'm doing Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. I'm not really traveling. I'm not flying all over the place or going, leaving my home. So I really just got back to my roots, and I just kind of scratched the itch of writing music again, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, we can go into some of the other projects if you want, but the Coney Hatch Live at the El Mocambo thing was the one that kind of kicked the doors open for me to go, okay, I spent many, many years working with Rush as part of the management and the label. And when Ray Daniels hired me, I agreed that I was going to put the bass down and really focus on that. So I didn't do a lot of music, boys, during that time. I really focused on my career as an A&R guy and taking care of the bands that were on our roster, and kind of put my I guess, personal career on the back burner, but COVID just busted it wide open, and I've been having a blast.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So the rumor is, and help me out here, that during COVID, you've been kind of digging into your vault, and you found some unreleased material that you've been putting on digital format. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the interesting thing was, and especially for guys, I think we're guilty of, stocking up our man caves, and putting stuff around us that we love, right? And so it got to the point where my wife said to me, my wife Monica said, like, Andy, like, honestly, dude, like, how many boxes of CDs and vinyl do you need? And I was like, well, how much room do I have? Like, can you find another room for it? And that, I think as guys, we're guilty of that. We love, like, a lot of my friends, we collect stuff, so, anyway, she was like, there's 12 bankers boxes in our storage shed. Can you go through them? And next thing I know, boys, I started finding these master tapes that I just stuck aside, and I had no real plans for them, other than I thought, okay, one day I got to do something with these, and I eventually struck a deal with the University of Toronto to donate a lot of my master tapes and my projects to what's called the Media Commons, and it's a very, very cool art program that the University of Toronto does, and they give you a tax credit, but and you have access to anything that you donate. And the cool thing is that any students that are either studying music or want to know what the process is of making a record, they have access to all of this stuff. Nobody can leave with it, but if you're a student of the University of Toronto and you're wanting to learn more about music or how books are written or how art is made or how painters work, there's a Media Commons. So I busted open this box and I found all of the master tapes for a band that I formed in the late 90s called Caramel that was signed to Geffen. And I had a lot of friends that were bugging the crap out of me going, Andy, how come you haven't put that up on Spotify or Apple or iTunes or Amazon or anything? So I got busy. Like I said, the Coney Hatch thing busted it wide open. I went and I transferred and got a lot of stuff digitized, and I worked with a company in Nashville called Symphonic Distribution. And so we put up for the first time since it was released back in, I'm trying to think, like maybe 1999 or something on Geffen. That record was never available digitally, my Caramel record, and I did the same with the Drug Plan record that I had done a deal with Artist Direct. And the Drug Plan, when I first signed that, that name scared the crap out of the record company. They said, you cannot call your band Drug Plan. And I was like, why can't I? And they said, well, it's just got all these negative connotations. And I was like, dude, do you have a drug plan? Because I got a drug plan. I know that I can, So, and there was all kinds of pharmacy references, and our logo was the big R with the little cross on it. So, long story short, guys, I worked with a mastering engineer in town here by the name of Harry Hess, and Harry was the founder of a band called Harem Scarum, but he's a very, very talented mastering guy. And we just cleaned up these files and got them to the point where I could deliver them to Symphonic. And it was, I know it's an overused phrase, but it really brought some closure to me, because those records, both of those deals, and it would take me a very long time to explain the highs and lows of signing the biggest deal of my life with Geffen Records, but only to have the record company sort of folded into Universal Music, and that record it came and gone so quickly. We had an amazing start where we were probably on, no word of lie, I think we were on over 400 radio stations in the U.S., and we had some dates with Stabbing Westward and Creed and Brother Kane, and then all of a sudden the record, Geffen Records, was absorbed by Universal, and I got my master tapes handed back to me, and I never did anything with them for over 20 years. Same thing with the Drug Plan Leisureworld records. So it was really nice for me to finally go, okay, I'm proud of both of those records. I'm going to get them up digitally so that people can listen to the projects that I did after Coney Hatch and after my solo records. So that was very rewarding. And my youngest daughter has a social media company that she's just started fresh out of university. So she was like, Dad, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you with your Twitter and your Instagram and your Facebook, which I'm just horrible at, boys. And she was like, she's like, I'll tell you how to do this. And I was like, well, I don't want to do anything, and I don't know what I'm doing. And she's like, just follow my lead, and we're going to talk about these releases, and we're going to, go find some old photos and some track sheets. And so that's what we did. And over COVID there, my expectations were fairly low on this, guys. I wasn't expecting to light the world on fire, but there's a lot of people in the U.S. that remember those records, and a lot of people that have sent me some nice emails about remembering songs like "I'm Dead," which was that track off Leisureworld that was a top 10 track in Boston, and we got a lot of airplay on it. And the honeymoon was over before I knew it. The record company folded, Artist Direct, and so many moons later, it's pretty rewarding to put those out and have them up on Apple and Amazon and Spotify and all the different DSPs, and to be able to finally email my friends, go, okay, you beat the crap out of me, boys. Now go on and here's the link so you can go hear those records, right? So I was pretty proud of that, guys. And to be honest with you, that's been a nice little check mark. Cool. I got those records back out, so people can hear them.
Yeah, I was listening to the Leisureworld one today, and I'm so thankful you put those back out. That's awesome.
I honestly have to tell you, and a lot of artists have a different barometer for material that they're happy with or proud of. And I would have to say that Leisureworld record, full stop, is the record that I'm the most proud of anything I've ever done. And, that goes for the record that earned me a couple Juno nominations and a Juno Award here in Canada and all of the Coney Hatch stuff. But that Leisureworld record, I'm so proud of it, man. We had so much fun making that record. And some of the stuff, as you guys would know when you talk to artists, when you go back to 1982, okay, so I was like, maybe 20 years old, and I hear some of the early Coney Hatch stuff, and I'm like, that's not a great song, but that was 19 when I wrote some of that stuff, right? So when fast forward that Leisureworld record, man, I had a lot of fun producing and co-writing on it and singing on it, and it's the one record in my career that I did that I had zero involvement with any record company. I went into the studio and did it exactly how I wanted to do it, with the band that I wanted to do it with, and the musicians, and nobody called the shots except for us. And then we got a deal and had some minor success with it. So maybe that's why it's felt a little bit more rewarding, because I really didn't have anybody breathing over me saying, you got to do this and you got to do that, and we don't like this song, and don't like the album artwork. I think the name's too dangerous, or whatever the hell the labels would say to you as you're doing these records, right? But yeah, that was a good one. I'm glad you guys brought it up. Anybody that goes to my website, there's references on andycurranmusic.com about how you can find the Leisureworld record and also find the Caramel record that was out on Geffen way back when.
Oh, so cool. Yeah, I'm going to look that up. Talk to us a little bit about being a lead singer and a bass player. What are the challenges of trying to do both at the same time? Because I know I sing in a men's barbershop-style chorus, and it's all I can do to remember the words, let alone try to play an instrument at the same time.
Okay, so this is a nice segue, right? Because, as a kid growing up in Toronto, you could well imagine how many times we got to see Rush, for me to be able to, every New Year's Eve, to go to Maple Leaf Gardens, and I saw the band play on the All the World stage tour when they played Massey Hall, and as a young musician, just going, oh my God, how does Geddy Lee play and sing like this? And then, seeing guys like Phil Lynott Phil was one of my favorite all-time bass player frontmen, but that was a big rabbit hole that I went down to search out my favorite bass player vocalist. Tim Bogert, who played in Beck, Bogert and the Peace, was another great virtuoso. There's so many great bass players out there that sing and play, and I'll have to tell you, as a musician, there's this weird thing that happens to your brain, and drummers have to do this all the time, where they're dividing their kick drum foot to their hi-hat foot and their arms, and they a drummer's brain is divided into four when you think about it, with the 2 feet and the 2 arms moving, right? But for me, it was always a challenge, because a lot of the times, guys, I would write a song, and then I would write the bass part and go in and record it, and then I would sing my lead vocals afterwards, and then it was like, oh my God, how am I going to sing and play this? I never even practiced this, right? So a lot of the challenge for me was to go, all right, smart ass, you wrote this bass line, how are you going to sing it at the same time? And it took a lot of discipline to divide my brain, to concentrate on what I was playing with my left and right hand, and then the other part of my brain would be like, okay, you're going to have to sing this, right? But my inspirations that I took were certainly, first and foremost, probably from Geddy, and he's the master of it, because anybody that knows Rush just knows that this guy is a crazy virtuoso, and how he plays bass pedals, keyboards, and bass guitar, and sings at the same time. Yeah. God, I don't know what the hell happened there, but it was something that it's a mistake that I repeat every single record. I do the same thing, and then every time it gets to the time when I know that I've got to go out there and do it live, I'm like, oh man, Curran, you did it to yourself again here. You're gonna have to go and learn the bass line and how to sing it, right? But I just think it takes a little bit of discipline, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, that's for sure.
Oh, fantastic. Nice. You're also planning your 30th anniversary deluxe release of your solo album. Can you talk more about this venture?
Yeah, so when my friend Randall Foster, who works over at Symphonic, when I called him up and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about helping me get Leisureworld and Caramel out, he had sort of semi-followed my career, and he was like, well, how come, why haven't you mentioned to me the record that you won a Juno Award for? And for anybody that's listening in the U.S., the Juno Award is the Canadian equivalent to a Grammy. Yeah. And after I left Coney Hatch, that was, let me sort of tell you guys that foray into that record was a very scary time for me, because I had been in Coney Hatch from probably about 80. So the start of the band was probably 80. So from 80 to 86, that was 6 years of just being the bassist, sort of the very big part of the writing team, but one of 2 vocalists. And the third record that Coney Hatch did was the Friction record. And the record company felt that one of the reasons that we weren't as successful as they thought we should be was because they figured that the 2 vocalist thing was very confusing. Mm-hmm. So Max Norman, who produced that record for us, and Max had worked with Ozzy Osbourne and Y&T and Bad Company. He had to be the bearer of the bad news, and he pulled me aside at the studio in Morin Heights, and he said to me, Andy, I hate to tell you this, but the label wants us to go with one lead vocalist on this record, and you're not the lead vocalist. So that was like, oh my God. I started this band. That was a tough pill for me to swallow as a founding member of Coney Hatch. So I took the hit as a team player, and I thought, okay, well, at least I've written a bunch of material on this. Maybe the record company's right. That was the least popular Coney Hatch record from our catalog. But going in and leaving Coney Hatch and taking a leap of faith into doing a solo record where I'm the only vocalist, I was like, okay, you have no one to blame but yourself if this record is a disaster. So when you guys are asking me about this, and I look back on that and I go, oh my God, I left the band that I formed, started a solo career. Coney Hatch was never, ever nominated for a Juno Award or won one. And not only did I win a Juno, we had 2 nominations as the best hard rock album and the most promising male vocalist, which I thought was funny because I had already been around for about 5 or 6 years. So it's just like, wait, how do you call me the most promising? I've been kicking around for 6 or 7 years now. But to answer your question, like the 30th anniversary came up really, really quick, and I got in touch with Tom Barry, who was the president of Alert Records, and I was like, and again, this goes back to COVID and cleaning out the baker's boxes and the wife going, "Come on, Andy, you got to purge." I found a bunch of what I call the No Tattoos record. I found live recordings. I found demos. I found alternate versions. So as recent as a couple days ago, boys, I have a really good like home studio, and I'm, you know, people laugh when you say I've got cassettes, and they're like, "What do you have cassettes for?" But back then, as we all know, you know, cassettes and 8-tracks and vinyl, that's what we listened to. So I started listening to all of these old cassettes that I would put my demos on, and the same mastering engineer that I mentioned to you, Harry Hess, said that he had a lot of success transferring audio from cassettes over to a digital platform and mastering them. So I've got about a half a dozen cassettes of really good live shows that were recorded properly, that I would say are probably like a 7 or 8 out of 10 audio wise, and we're going to go in and do some remastering on those. And then Tom Barry, the label president, is giving me access to the master tapes, and we might remix a few and maybe remaster some. I'll probably go in and find some old photos and do some liner notes, and maybe just, you know, tracks that didn't make the record. Nice. Because we either felt that the material wasn't strong enough, or you know, I've learned through this exercise that fans of any band, they just want to hear everything. They don't give a crap if you think the song is crap. They're like, "Oh, did you record that around the same time? I want to hear it." Yeah. I learned that with working with Rush. You have these fans that are completists. They want everything. So I'm having fun digging through the vaults on that one, boys. And I would think in a perfect world, I'll probably, you know, maybe try to get that thing out by the end of the year or early next year. But I've got the Envy of None project that's sort of like the hot topic right now to try to finish that. And then after that, the what I call the No Tattoos record, I'll definitely put that up digitally and probably do some vinyl versions of that as well.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Well, that leads me to the next question. I guess we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, the Envy of None. You appeared on the 2 tracks by Alex Lifeson, which is on his website. Can you talk about this new venture and what can we expect out of it?
Yeah, and you brought it up because, you know, I still work with Geddy and Alex in the capacity of one of my many jobs, guys, that I would take care of when I was over at the management company is as probably the only musician at SRO Management when I did the 12 years there as part of the management label team. I took care of all of their endorsements, so Gibson, Fender, DW, Moog, Tech 21, Orange amplifiers. You know, that the relationships needed somebody to babysit them. So after the 40th anniversary tour, when Neil said that he was done with touring, and by the way, for the record, I can tell you that Neil definitely did not know that he was ill at that time. If he did, it was certainly unbeknownst to any of us. Mm-hmm. So the whole operation just kind of went into limbo. Nobody knew. There was certainly talks of Rush recording again. But in terms of touring, Neil made it very clear that he wanted to spend some time with his family and just not be on the road anymore. So Geddy and Alex called me and they said, "Hey, would you still be cool, Andy, with taking care of Gibson and Fender and all of the relationships there, and and take care of that like you did when you were at SRO?" So one of the very first things, and I, of course, said yes. What am I going to do? Say no to Ged and Al? I love the guys. And it was just like, I'm a gear nut anyway. So it's just like, hell yeah, I'm going to meet with Fender and Gibson, right? So, Gibson had the right, contractually, to release an Epiphone version of the Alex Lifeson Access guitar. That was contractually written in. It was sort of worded vaguely like, you know, once the Access is sort of sold through, we have the right to contact Alex and ask him if he's interested in doing a more affordable version of the Access guitar. And for any musicians that are listening, when the Access guitar came out, it was like $6,000 or $7,000. So not everybody could afford that. Whereas if you go to an Epiphone, you're probably looking at probably 1/10 the cost, so $600 to $1,000, right? We'll get you an Epiphone model. And we were faced with the challenge during COVID of what the heck are we going to do here to promote this guitar? There was no photo sessions. There was no sending a video team down from Nashville or LA. Traditionally, that's what we would do. It would be a dog and pony show. Let's get the photo sessions happening. Let's get videos to help promote this. So Alex came up with the brilliant idea that he was going to narrate the video that would basically be part of the launch of the Epiphone guitar. And he said, I'm going to get that to you, Andy. I'm going to narrate it at home. And then if you could help get some images, maybe what we'll do is we'll go back in time and look at my 50-year ride with Gibson guitars. And inevitably the question came up, guys, okay, what music are we going to put underneath this? Do you want to have Russian music underneath there? And he said, no. Actually, those two instrumentals that I called you and asked you to play bass on, I'm thinking that I want to have those as sort of like the backdrop music. And so I'm going to back up and tell you, when I got the call that day, when Alex said, I'm working on some material here, would you be interested in playing bass on it? It was like a full-on pinch me moment where I wanted to bang the phone and go, okay, wait a second. Did the guitarist of Rush just ask me to play bass on some stuff? Like, what did I do to deserve this? In what world would I have ever thought that Alex Lifeson was going to call me and collaborate with him? Because I was very careful when I was at the management company not to cross lines. I'm part of the label. I'm part of the management. And not once did it ever come up where these guys were like, I know you're a musician. Do you want to work with us? And nor did I cross that line, guys. I just never went there, right? So many years later, for him to call me up, and the first thing out of my mouth was, I said, well, don't you know any other bassists? I think you've got a guy on speed dial and his initials are GL. Like, why aren't you calling Ged to play bass on this stuff, right? And, you know, in his defense, we had, when we did the soundtrack for the Trailer Park Boys movie, there was a song that Alex played on with Bubbles called Liquor and Whores. It's a beautiful love song called Liquor and Whores. And I was in the control room, and Alex and Bubbles, Mike Smith, came out and said, Curran, get a bass. We need a bass player, and you're going to be the bass player with Bubbles and the Shit Rockers. So it wasn't the first time that I played bass with Alex.
Nice.
And anyway, so I immediately said yes. And my thought process on this was, don't you dare try to pretend that you're even close to how Geddy Lee could play, nor did I want to play all the tracks. If you've listened to them on Alex's website, they're really different from Rush, and I had a lot of fun doing them. On Spy House, I actually played through a zipper pedal, which is like a funk envelope filter. The harder you hit it, you get this like wah wah, almost like a wah wah sound. So I played that on Spy House, and then on Kabul Blues, it was just kind of like laying back and being understated so that Alex could play on top of that. So those two tracks went on his website, and Alex purposely wanted them to go on there. We thought, what a great way to get people to come over to alexlifeson.com. What a great backdrop to tell people that this is the first new music since Rush has played in a long time. And I guess that whole chapter of Alex calling me and asking me to play bass on those two tracks kind of opened the conversation pit up, where he was like, Andy, what else are you working on? And I said, well, I've got a really good friend here in Toronto by the name of Alf Annabellini. Alf is an amazing mixing and recording engineer, but he's also a really great musician. He plays guitar and keyboards. And I said, we stumbled upon this really talented female vocalist who lives in Portland, Oregon. She's, at the time when I met her, she was, I think, 21 or 22. And we just started sending her instrumental ideas. But the instrumental ideas, guys, just to give you an idea stylistically, because you said at the beginning of your show, you are not genre specific. So when I was talking to Maiah, I said, I'm writing a lot of stuff and the folder that I'm putting it in is called the Anti-Drew. It was the anti-Andrew or Andy stuff. It wasn't like Coney Hatch. It wasn't metal. It wasn't alternative. It was, I listened to a lot of ambient stuff, guys like Thievery Corporation and Massive Attack. And, you know, some of those British bands I love, you know, rest his soul, Lee Scratch Perry, who does a lot of reggae ambient dub, and you know, Bill Laswell, and some of this trip hop ambient stuff. And so I started writing just to scratch an itch. You know, I still kept writing the bone crunching metal stuff, but I had this other style where I was playing fretless bass and keyboard bass and just loops and things, and very anti anything that I was writing in a different direction. And I was having a lot of fun doing it. Bonobo is another artist that I love that just has its atmospheric, you know, a lot of trip hop and just almost like soundtracky. So I mentioned it to Alex, and he said, "Oh man, that sounds really cool. Can you send over some stuff that you're working on?" And at the time we had finished, we had started 2 tracks with Maiah. And he heard it and called me back the next day, and he said, "This is awesome. What are you going to do with it?" And we started talking about it, and I asked him if he would be interested in playing some guitar on it. 1 song led to 2, led to 3. We ended up having about 6 songs completed that we were literally doing over COVID, sending ideas back and forth. At one point, Maiah flew to Toronto, and we did a couple days of vocals with her and did some drum tracks in Toronto, and then she flew home. But it got to the point where Alex called me one day, and he said, "What are we going to do with this stuff?" Because we honestly had no plan. It was just like friends writing and getting together and having a laugh, right? So I said, "Geez, dude, I don't know. Like, what do you think we should do with this stuff?" I just thought we were having fun. And he's like, "I know, but it's too good. The world needs to hear this," right? And Alex has been a real inspiration, pushing us, going, "Come on, let's do some more tracks. Let's finish it." And he kept bringing up the word soundtracky. He said, "This stuff, I think, would lend itself really well to film and television." So because of my years at Anthem Records, I got to meet a lot of really great people in the film and television industry, some sync supervisors, some people that do music programming for film and television. And I reached out to them, and I told them about this project. I said, "You know, it's essentially an indie project, but we have this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame guitar player playing on it." And so would you be interested in hearing it? And of course, at the minute you drop Alex's name, everybody's like, "Hell yeah, send that to me right now," right? So no exaggeration, I would say within 2 days of me sending it out to about a dozen film supervisors, I got a call from a woman in Vancouver. She said, "I'm working on a Netflix series right now called Tiny Pretty Things. I listened to the music. I really, really dig it. Would you be interested in licensing us one of these songs for one of the episodes of Tiny Pretty Things?" So, I mean, it wasn't like a Brinks truck pulled up. It wasn't a ton of money, but what it was, I guess it was validation that we, the 4 of us, weren't drinking Kool-Aid, our own Kool-Aid, like somebody else outside the 4 of us liked it, right? Yeah. So that gave us inspiration, boys, to really get to work and finish some other tracks. So at this very moment, what I would like to tell you is we have 11 songs pretty much completed. Wow. Nice. We have an offer on our table from a boutique, really cool label in the UK that want to release the album this year, and it would come out hopefully on vinyl and CD for people who still like to have the tactile touch of owning something, and would certainly come out digitally under the project name of Envy of None. And I would say that if everything goes as planned, by the end of this month, the deal will have been signed, and we will make some formal announcement about what label we're working with, who it's coming out on, when, I think we would probably release maybe 1 or 2 songs prior to the physical release, but it's pretty rewarding because we literally started it off with just no intention other than having fun writing with people that we love to hang with, and there was no real let's go out and get a record deal, let's put a band together and tour. There was none of that, right? It was just like, hey, let's just send this stuff around and have fun composing it. So that's that's a scoop for you guys, because anybody else that I've spoken to about Envy of None, there was no real formal deal offer. And we did speak to about a half a dozen labels, and I would say that there was some really strong interest, and the majority of the labels said there's no way we can release this year. The vinyl production is backed up, and one of the few labels that said we will guarantee we'll get this out for you this year was this label in the UK, and we're working towards finalizing that deal with them and getting this record out this year. So I'm pretty stoked about it.
We are excited.
Yeah.
So excited.
I can't wait.
And if I was, and the last thing I would say, boys, if I was to give you, like for Rush fans, it's unmistakable when Alex plays guitar, you're going to go, that's Alex Lifeson. But this material sounds nothing like Rush. It sounds nothing like Coney Hatch or Leisureworld or Drug Plan. It's like if Massive Attack met maybe 9 Inch Nails with Sneaker Pimp vocals on it or something. That's kind of like, I'm dumbing it down for you to give you an idea of stylistically where it sits.
Oh, we like
but
all
it's
that.
super trippy. It's super trippy, and it's dark, but it's very poppy at times too. So it's pretty. The material is very broad direction wise.
Yeah, you got us all juiced up over
I know. Yeah, we like all that stuff. Can you talk a little bit about, like, you're from Canada, so some bands get real popular in their home country, but then just can't break into the United States. Or what was it like for you trying to break into the United States?
Yeah, Eric, that's a really good question, and I think you look at the obvious ones. So Rush was a good one. Obviously, the Guess Who, Triumph was another one that had great success out of Texas, or Loverboy. There's a handful of Canadian bands that really popped, and some of the newer ones, obviously, why am I having a brain fart here? There's a great band from Montreal that have about 10 members. The name's escaping me right now. It'll come to me. But anyway, there's some obvious ones that have had instant recognition there. And Coney Hatch got lucky because when we started, MTV was just starting up, and believe it or not, they were soliciting labels like, we need videos. So for us, we right time, right place. We wouldn't have been invited out on that tour with Judas Priest for 2.5 months, or same with Iron Maiden, if we didn't have MTV success and radio. And MTV success spun off into the radio success, where we were being played at WMMS in Cleveland and Pittsburgh and LA, KLOS, and it spilled out from MTV. But I think about a band like the Tragically Hip here in Canada, who are probably one of the most loved Canadian bands of all time, but they could not get arrested outside of maybe upstate New York and Detroit, where the airplay spilled over into your country, right? Yeah. So I think it's a very tough transition for Canadian bands to actually make an impact in the U.S. And I'm not too sure what it is that has been sort of the hurdle. I think I've got lucky with a bunch of my projects because they were immediately embraced by radio. But if you don't have that behind you, it's a tough haul, man. You really gotta conquer state by state, and obviously New York State's an easy one. You cross at Buffalo, and then you go into Syracuse and Rochester, and you start trying to take everybody in every city. And we were able to do that a little bit, Coney Hatch, and get into Cleveland and Pittsburgh and stuff like that, But it's a great question, and I'm not too sure why it's so tough, But some bands have had a lot more luck than others.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I kind of wanted to bring this back to your writing methodology, that is, as far as the diversity of your writing from your younger years in Coney Hatch to your solo album to all your other ventures. How do you feel as though that your writing style has matured over the years?
Well, it's funny. I've got 3 brothers who, and if you're from a big family. Oh, by the way, sorry, boys, it's Arcade Fire that I wanted to mention. That's obviously Arcade Fire is one of our best exports, and same with Sarah McLachlan is another good one. But anyway, sorry, I knew it would come to me.
Yeah.
So getting back to the writing style, when I go back to 1982, I was a really young guy, and you know, my writing, I thought was, I look back, and it's very primitive, but it was instinctual and it was guttural. And you know, my brothers told me that a couple people were slamming me on Facebook about my lyrics on monkey bars and going, wow, that was really prolific. This guy's like writing this song called Monkey Bars, which literally, if you go look at those lyrics, it reads like a nursery rhyme. But I wasn't expecting to get any kind of Pulitzer Prize or any kind of, you know, award for those lyrics. And I look back at them and I say, okay, yes, they were really juvenile and simplistic, but I certainly crafted them that way. And as a young musician, I can't read music. I wish I could, but I can read tablature now. But I basically wrote Coney Hatch songs on my bass guitar, and then I would sing them to the guys in the band. And when I spoke with my friend Steve Harris from Iron Maiden, is a buddy of mine, and we struck up a friendship when we toured together in '83. And he said, well, that's really interesting because that's what I do with Iron Maiden. I come up with the riffs on my bass and work with the guitar players. So I forced myself over the years to learn how to play guitar. If you give me enough tracks, I can really make it sound like I'm a convincing guitar player on record. And I got a few compliments from Alex on the Envy and None stuff, where I was like, oh, by the way, you know, please redo my guitar tracks because they stink. And he was like, actually, no, I really like them, Andy, and we're leaving them. And I was like, okay, well, maybe Curran, you're not that bad, right? But I also think, based on your question, I'm pretty guilty of wearing a lot of my influences on my sleeve. So, you know, whatever, like I grew up listening to certainly a steady diet of Aerosmith and AC/DC and James Gang and Thin Lizzy and all of those bands. If you listen to Coney Hatch, you can hear bits of those, whether it's the harmony solos or the wide open chording. And I'm guilty as charged on that. Like, those bands influence me, and I wear them proudly on my sleeve. I try not to rip bands off directly, but there's certainly those influences that come out. But then as my writing, I think, matured, and as I got older, as I told you boys, I started listening to a lot of different types of music, and whether it was me going down the rabbit hole with bass players that I love and listening to Stanley Clarke and you know, Return to Forever or Weather Report or Jaco Pastorius or getting into all the Jeff Beck solo records. And I started just broadening the horizons and listening to other types of music and really listening to a lot of funk and you know, Sly and the Family Stone and War, and just loving those bass players. And I don't think those bands came out as much in my writing style, but I think it helped me mature. And when we started to get into the No Tattoos record, I was still doing Four on the Floor, cock rock, but the Soho 69 record was very much influenced by the 90s bands that I listened to, which were Stone Temple Pilots and King's X and, you know, Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and all of those bands, I think, kind of wore off on me, where I started writing a little bit more alternative. Yeah. And then by the time Leisureworld and Caramel hit, I was fully into Nine Inch Nails and anything that was trippy and alternative. I started getting away from the Four on the Floor, you know, drums and guitar, and just trying to expand the horizon on that. But I don't mind putting on those old tennis shoes and going back, because when we did the Coney Hatch 4 record, funny story for you guys, that this label called Frontiers out of Italy, I had a conversation with Serafino, who is their, I guess he's their A&R guy, founder, and he initially contacted us and said, "Andy, I want a new Coney Hatch record." And I was like, "We don't have any new songs. We've been living on our former glory, going out there playing all the old songs, right?" And he said, "No, well, you guys need to go out and write some new music." And we had old riffs around, guys, that we never finished. But I will vividly remember, he said, "I'm going to," and he had kind of like this, almost like this I don't know, like a Sopranos vibe to him. And he was like, okay, I'm going to tell you one time and one time only. I want vintage Coney Hatch. I do not want Foo Fighters or Queens of Stone Age. I want vintage Coney Hatch. No surprises, Andy. Are you clear? I want no surprises. So I was like, oh my God, Curran, you're going to have to go in the Wayback Machine to 1980 and start pulling out these cock rock riffs, right? So what we did was we had 2 or 3 songs that we'd never finished off back in the 80s, and we dusted them off and we redid them. A song called Connected was an old riff from 1982, and that kind of just got us writing in that mode again. But I have no problem morphing back. I can easily, like, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but that kind of stuff I feel like I could write in my sleep. It feels very comfortable for me. Whereas the chapter with Alex and Envy of None has been very challenging. I'm moving into uncharted territories here in terms of my writing.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. All right, so I have one last question for you. Jeff, do you have any other questions?
No, I'm good.
All right, so this is kind of like an in general question. So back in 2006, 2007, my brother-in-law and I, we went to go see Rush on the Snakes and Arrows tour. And a week and a half later, we went and saw Van Halen with the reunion tour with David Lee Roth up in Chicago. But that being said, was, you know, the week before that, we see Rush on Snakes and Arrows, and we were right smack in front of Alex Lifeson, and I've never seen him play live before. Just totally blown away by the man's chops. So Jeff's seen him twice.
All
right, well, I got to see him once. But anyway,
okay,
and it was just the most perfect concert I've ever listened to in my life, sonically, that is. You go see Van Halen, it is nothing like that at all. It is, just a raw party on stage. And, Eddie Van Halen, obviously he's Eddie Van Halen. But my question to you is that obviously Alex Lifeson is every bit up there as Eddie Van Halen is if you see him live. Why doesn't Alex Lifeson not get the same kudos that Eddie Van Halen had? What caused that?
Okay, I have a theory here, and okay. I'm not the first guy that may have said this, and I don't think it's new, but I'm going to say to you, first and foremost, I agree with you. As a musician in the chops, I think Alex Lifeson might be one of the most underrated guitarists. But I think the reason that Eddie was maybe, put on a pedestal and Alex wasn't, because you think of that type of music that Van Halen had, the part, like, I'm a massive Van Halen fan. That first record with Eruption and Running with the Devil, and that was one, I just played the crap out of that. But Eddie was front and center. He was, yes, David was singing on it, but the cherry on the top was Eddie's playing, and it was out there, and it was front, and there was like a real live guitar here. Now let's move over to Rush, and I'm going to make a comparison to The Who. When you have when you have John Entwistle playing bass and Keith Moon on drums, those are two really big personalities. Yes. Their playing is like very dominant. Entwistle's lines are busy, they're great, but as a guitar player, Pete Townsend had to find his place in that band, and I believe that that's where Alex is. Alex is the glue that glued everything together for Rush music and made it all make sense, because you've got Neil Peart, who arguably the best drummer in the world, Geddy Lee, arguably the bass player in the world, or one of them, and these guys are big personalities. So I would sort of lean to say that if Eddie Van Halen was in there, that would be like, okay, we're competing for space here. Like, there's only so many notes that you could play that resonate. So I think Alex moved into this very comfortable role where his guitar playing glued they glued Geddy and Neil together. It glued the songs together, and for me, he's just so underrated. But the more you listen to Rush music, the more you can appreciate how Alex played such a big part in that band's sound. And I think he serves the song, but not only that, he gave the space for Neil and Geddy to step out like they did, similar to what Pete did with the Who. That's my theory. Anyway, I could be totally off mark on that, but that's the way I feel about Al.
Oh, well said. Well, we've run out of our allotted time for this evening. before we let you go, do you have anything else that you would like to promote or plug that we did not cover tonight?
Well, first off, Jeff and Eric, thank you for having me on. I had a blast.
Yeah.
And my favorite interviews are done by people who take the time to deliver up great questions, which you guys did. But I think, honestly, you've covered everything. I want to tell people, like, stay tuned, have some fun, go see what Alex is doing on his Instagram account. He's such a class clown. There's going to be some great news coming out on his website, on my website. There is a project coming up that I can't tell you about, guys, that is going to be announced this week, later on this week, I think on the 10th, about some more music that Alex and I composed together for a completely different project. So I've been sworn to secrecy, and I'm not allowed to be a spoiler on that, but you're going to hear some other stuff come out about collaborations that we've done. And I'm still pinching myself even saying that I've been working with Alex. It's just such an honor. And the very last thing I'll tell you is, like every other Rush fan in the world, I'm waiting for Al and Geddy to get back together again and write some music. So this is very much feels like a stopover project for Alex. My instincts tell me that Geddy and Alex are going to work on some material soon. They're best friends. I can't see how that wouldn't happen. I've told them that I'll help them on anything that they want to work on. So I'll put on my record company hat and help them wrangle whatever they need. But I've got my hand up and waiting for the boys to get back together again. But super proud to be involved with anything that Lifeson's name is on, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, this is how it's going to work. We have about 3.5 weeks worth of material that we have to release before yours, but look for your episode to come out in about 3.5, 4 weeks. We think Jeff sounds safe. Yeah. And Jeff, the editing wizard here, will get it all cleaned up for us here for our mispronunciations.
And if we hear what this other project is, we'll slip it into the intro.
Yeah, exactly. And then when it's all edited and ready to go, we'll make sure that your press people get the link, and please share it to your socials wherever you can. We'd appreciate it.
Oh, 100%, boys. I will absolutely proudly share it. And I appreciate the time, guys, and thank you for the great questions. And you guys take care of yourself, and maybe we'll catch up down the line once In Vietnam's out, and we can chat about things and see what the world thinks of that music.
Yeah. That sounds fantastic.
All right, boys. My pleasure, man.
Take care of yourself. And we'll be in touch in about a month or so.
Awesome. Right. Eric and Jeff, thanks, boys. Really appreciate it. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Cheers. Good night.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Their tongue and pays their bills in